Coming up on today's show.
And I'm continually amazed at how many times people reach across their body. So are you right or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
You're right-handed. So on the right-hand side, you want to keep your pens and paper because that's the way you're going to take notes.
As far as how you're sitting in your office in relation to your door.
Oh yeah.
Some people have their back to the door. Other people have face the door, and same with your monitor. Do you want? Where do you place your monitor as far as viewing and your back, with respect to the door?
And I think for some people, having that one folder is an obtainable goal. I don't think it is for everyone.
Tips on how to set up a productive office today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to go in the office and help you get it set up for maximum productivity. And to help us with that is Shannon McGinnis. She is from OrganizeForSuccess.com, certified professional organizer. Shannon, welcome again on Keeping You Organized.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now today we're going to be in the office, but if people want to go back and look at one of our previous podcasts where we talked about mail organization, they can do that by going to sme.com/podcast. But today we're in the office and we are going to give all kinds of tips on how to be more productive, right? So
Sure.
When you work with clients and you go into office, what's probably the most common thing that hinders people from being productive?
Well, first let's talk about basics. When I go in and I meet with a client for the very first time, I'm really observing them and I'm continually amazed at how many times people reach across their body. So are you right or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
You're right-handed. So on the right-hand side, you want to keep your pens and paper because that's the way you're going to take notes. I'm left-handed, so I keep my pens and paper on the left-hand side. And so that means you also want to think about what hand you answer the phone with. I instinctively grabbed with my right because I'm going to write with my left.
Oh. I'm not trying to remember because I usually don't answer the phone. I let it go to voicemail. But that's a whole nother productivity tip, right?
That is.
But right now I have it on I guess that is, I would do a left hand and be able to write with my right. Yeah.
So we're going to talk first about the basic infrastructure of the top of your desk because those kinds of things actually just take a little bit of extra time and you're doing it instinctively when you're reaching across your body. But if you don't have to do that, it just creates a lot more ease. So the first thing is, where's the phone located? Where are the pens and paper located? And then what are some other things that you're doing all the time? So most people are using their mouse and their keyboard regularly. So you really want to have that at optimum height. And this doesn't have to be all about ergonomics, but you really want to think about how are you sitting. And it's really great now that so many people have stand-up desks. So all of those things want to move with you so that they're at the proper height. Or some people switch to sitting on a ball. You still want to think about, okay, well then where is your keyboard, whether you have a keyboard tray or does your laptop move with that if your height changes when you are sitting on a different surface.
Now I have a question. This might be not exactly what we're talking about here, but I think it relates to it as far as how you're sitting in your office in relation to your door. Some people have their back to the door. Other people have face the door, and same with your monitor. Do you want? Where do you place your monitor as far as viewing and your back, with respect to the door?
Great. I'm happy to go in this direction. So I always call that the command position. You want to have your desk whichever, you want to have it ideally anchored on a wall, but sometimes a floating desk is fine. But you really want to be able to see anyone that is entering your office. You want to be able to make eye contact with them. You want to be able to quickly process who it is and maybe what they would be talking to you about. So always having your eyes facing the door. They don't have to be directly facing if you can have your monitor on one side and still see relatively clearly. If someone's going to come to your door, you can see that out of your peripheral vision. Right. So you bring up the monitor, and again, you want to think about how is your desk laid out. Most people don't have it right in the middle because if they do, then it sort of takes up the most amount of space if you write a lot. Now, different generations have a different relationship with handwriting notes and things like that. Some people are just very instinctively typing all the time. So in that case, you can decide if you want to have your monitor left, right, or center, but you don't want it to block your vision of the door. And you also want to make sure, again, just what we were talking about, that your body position still allows for that. Because if your monitor is, if I'm facing you and my monitor is always over here, then I'm hyperextending, I'm always stretching the shoulder more.
Right.
So you really want to be able to think about that. And having a productive office means that you don't have body pain.
Right.
And you really want to think about that too.
Okay, so a little bit more back to the desktop.
Yes,
we talked a little bit about the keyboard and the monitor. What else on the desktop is important? And some people might say, well, you should only have like one file or whatever you're working on and it should be clean. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, again, everything that I do with clients is very customized. And I think for some people, having that one folder is an obtainable goal. I don't think it is for everyone. And so for some people also, their desk always has to have some kind of income or inbox. So that can be on the furthest corner, the corner closest to the door. Have some type of inbox that your assistant or someone is dropping off or that they're going to pick up, sort of an ingoing and outgoing box. But then you also want to have, where are you keeping your active projects? So one of the things that I love that instead of a horizontal pile, which is hidden, is to create your active projects as vertical files. And so having a tiered file holder allows for that, and it takes up the exact same space as if they were all piled. Much neater, much easier to read. So you want to have your active files out on your desk. Also so you don't forget about them, but because you, in different hours of the day, whether you're on different committees or you have to go to different meetings or things like that, you always want to be able to grab what's coming next.
Now, is there like a magic number of active files? I mean, do we not want to exceed 10 or 5, or what would be the, and are there some maybe labels or categories to those files that are maybe a little more generic on your desktop storage system?
So on the tiered file holder, there's a certain number of slots. So depending on the piece that you buy will also dictate the amount that each space can hold. I don't know that every person has their own magic number, but I think that whatever is there is realistic for either whatever your system is of what you're going to do that day, those committee meetings or whatever it is, those projects that you're going to work on, or that week. And some people have repetitive meetings, or there's big enough projects, or client files, that would be another example. Who are you seeing today? Whatever it's going to be that works best for your circumstances. Now,
would you take that desktop file and maybe change it either every day or every week on what's in there? Is there any kind of maintenance rules that would go along with that?
Sure. A few things. What's great about the tiered file holder is that it allows you to change priorities. If you want to have whatever's most important to you right up front, right? Or you can change it according to the frequency. So these are your meetings in the next 2 or 3 days, and a week out is further back. So again, the space between them is going to be your threshold, or your amount that you can actually keep in that space, and the number of slots in that is going to really dictate how many projects or files or things that you need.
Okay, so are we done with the desktop, or are there any other little tips and tricks for productivity on your desktop?
You know, I work with different people, have different relationships with their stapler, and how many times are you reaching across
Me and my stapler, by the way, aren't speaking right now, but we're going to work that out through counseling. But other than that.
So if you use your stapler a lot, and maybe you're not talking to it right now, but you know, if you don't use it, you can have it in a drawer, right? I mean, some people think, oh, you always have to have the tape and the stapler and everything on the top of your desktop. If you don't use your stapler every week, don't have it out. I don't keep mine out because I don't use it that often. And so, but some people with their client files or whatever they're receiving, they absolutely have to use it every single day. And again, you want to have that right within arm's reach with the hand. Again, I'm using my left hand because that's my dominant hand, the hand that would use would do the stapler.
Wow, that's a great, I think I haven't heard that tip before. That is a great tip, by the way. So, what that got me thinking is that a lot of people in their desks, they have piles. So, and maybe it's because they haven't gotten around to filing. If you're going into a client for the first time and, kind of the SWAT team approach, how do you deal with the piles that are there? Do you just pile all the piles into one pile and say, before I leave, we got to go through all these? Or how do people get control of that? Because wouldn't you think that there's a lot of the desktop clutter is just unfiled things?
Absolutely. And each piece of paper often is a decision unless they're stapled together or they're in a file folder. So it does take time, but I always want to start with the most recent pile or what they think is the priority pile. Because stacking it all in one, they had some system for those piles, and so we really want to go with what's most important or most recent first, because that's what they're going to deal with, and that's how we might create those project files on the tiered file system. Or there's a whole nother category for, okay, these things can be filed. And whether they do their own filing or they have an administrative assistant to file, when I'm working one-on-one with a client, I will help them create the files, because if it hasn't gotten into the files, I want to make sure that there's a file there. Or sometimes in a lot of companies, the project changes. And so they change the name, they can change the name of the product, whatever it is. I was working with a client and their employees changed their name, whether through marriage or divorce or things like that. So you do want to keep what the files are called current as well.
Okay. Well, I had a thought, and the thought is this, that a lot of people, I think, don't like to file because they want to keep it within visual range. They feel if I file it away, I will forget about it and won't work on it. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want your answer to that. How do we deal with filing something away and not forgetting about it? So we're with Shannon McGinnis from OrganizedForSuccess.com talking about tips for a productive office, and we'll get more of them when we come back.
When you've got it together, everyone can tell. Your confidence is obvious. Introducing Viewables.com from Smead. Use the Viewables labeling system to transform your drawer of hanging files into a tidy, organized filing system. Using the premium hanging folder tabs, see the label from the front, top, and back. It's easy. Access Viewables.com from any computer, tablet, or internet-enabled smartphone. Let's make some labels. It's free, and there's nothing to download or install. Choose the label type and format your label just the way you want. You can even add index characters or icons for distinctive filing. Set up a free Viewables cloud account, and your secure login lets you save your projects for convenient access from any computer. And with Viewables multi-purpose labels, you can use one label for any type of file, including hanging folders, top tab folders, super tab folders, or oversized items like notebooks and file boxes. Upload a list of file headings and print your complete set of labels in moments. There's even a library of templates for commonly used label sets. It's never been easier to set up neat-looking files that have easy-to-read headings and efficient color codes. Obviously organized. Viewables.com. From Smead, keeping you organized.
We're back now on Keeping You Organized, discussing tips for a productive office with Shannon McGinnis from OrganizedForSuccess.com. We had the great stapler tip that, and by the way, all this will be in our show notes too. So if someone tuned in a little bit later or fast forwarded, they got to go back and listen to that tip because that's a great one.
Thank you.
But we're kind of beyond that now, and before the break, I teased you with the idea of, I think a lot of people have piles because they visually don't want to forget about something. So how do you keep something on top of mind, yet have it filed away? Do you have a tip for that?
Yeah, because that is a legitimate fear, out of sight, out of mind, and they feel like it's going to fall through the cracks. So for people that are really kinesthetically oriented and they like to write things down, I think a whiteboard is an excellent solution. So we were just talking about how they set up the top of the desk and the visualization of where do they look at the monitor and how do they see the door and anyone coming in. But another thing you want to always be looking at is your whiteboard. You know, what's going to keep you organized? If you put your, what I call big buckets, your big projects on that, then you always remember to go back to those and you can circle back to them. The other thing is just using this example, is color coding them so that you know a specific committee is a certain color, or if it pertains to money, it's in a green folder, because then that's a really quick visual cue that you can get rid of looking at anything else that's not in that particular color.
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit earlier about the ergonomics, but how about the whiteboard? So let's say, we spend a lot of time facing our monitor, and there's probably something beyond that on a wall. What do we want on that wall, and what do we want on the side walls? Because my family's going to say to me, where is our family picture at? Oh, is that the thing I should be looking at the most behind my monitor, or is it off to the side? And something like a whiteboard, for example, has a lot of writing on it and actually could be distractive. So if you're sitting in a meeting, where would you kind of put that in an office?
Yeah, and that's a great point, that if you have other people in your office, is what you have on your whiteboard confidential. Oh, yeah. So that's something to think about, absolutely. I love the example that you used of the family photo, because when you are looking at your monitor all the time, ideally you can also have a window that you can see out of, because part of what helps you concentrate is if you change the focus from very close-up nearsightedness of the monitor to something long distance, just to allow your brain to readjust. So what I would recommend is, if you don't have a window to gaze out, having some kind of beautiful photo, whether that is your family photo is inspiring, or it's a landscape, or it's a piece of art that really inspires you, just to have something to look at that isn't your whiteboard all the time, because you might be composing a really important document or email or presentation, and you just want to gaze up and be thinking about whatever you're writing, but not have it distract you of like, oh, right, those 7 things are really important. So yeah, having it something that you can glance at, whichever way works for you in the position of your desk, but isn't something that you're always looking at above your monitor. Great question.
Okay, good. So we got kind of some of the stuff on the wall and the desktop. What about filing systems? Most people have a desk where they have at least one file drawer near them, but then they have other secondary file drawers. Do you recommend putting certain things in certain drawers?
I do. And when we were talking about cleaning up the desktop, right, because when I do come in and there's those piles of papers everywhere, I also want to recommend that within your arm's reach of your desk, that you have a trash can, a recycling bin, and a shredder. Whether it's a shredder pile that goes into a company bin, or whatever it is, for the confidential information that you have cleared off that you no longer want to keep. So we've gotten rid of the things that you don't want to keep, and files are the ways that you keep the things that you do want to keep. So there's a difference between active files and reference files. So the things that we were talking about perhaps on the tiered file holder could be your active projects. Those are ongoing, and you need to address them in whatever once a week or once a day frequency. Also, you mentioned having a file drawer right in your desk. And for some people, they would rather have their active files right there. Whichever side is their predominant hand, having it right so that it's always next to them. And then the file cabinet behind them is for the reference. And having the reference file cabinet is really important. It doesn't have to be then while you're sitting at your desk. Most office chairs do roll around and pivot. So if you can pivot to that, you think about a 4-drawer filing cabinet, and you want to have the most important documents that you would reference in the drawers 2 and 3, because for the top drawer you have to stand up to look in, and it's really hard to bend down and read the file names on the bottom drawer. So you want to have maybe your bottom drawer is really old archives, and things that you don't reference very often could be in the top drawer. So really thinking about what is ready to be filed, whether it's active or reference, and then where are you going to keep it based on the frequency that you need it.
Okay, wow. We're covering a lot of area now. What have we left out? We've talked about the desktop, the files. Any other last minute tips here for a productive office?
Just picking up with the files that we were just talking about and tying in with that shredder and things like that, you really want to know what your company's retention record policy is, because usually the standard is 80% of things in the file cabinet don't get referenced again. Okay. And so really looking at that, whether the product is defunct or the person no longer works there, if it's someone on your team, or you don't need to keep it past 7 years, really looking at those old files and seeing what you can purge is also going to really help you be productive with what's current and not bogged down with the old stuff, because that's where the bottleneck happens of those piles on your desk when your file cabinets are too tight that you don't want to file.
Okay, great. And then I suppose there is some kind of even longer term storage where you take it out of the file and maybe into a storage box?
Absolutely, off-site, or it doesn't have to be in your office. Maybe there's a room in your company or something like that. If it's a home-based office, then maybe it goes in the basement or the garage. You just want to be careful then to store it in more of a plastic archive box because of insects, moisture, rodents. Whatever you've decided you want to keep, you want to keep for a long time.
Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time. I want you to tell us about your books, right?
Sure.
Tell us the books you've written. I know you brought them along here.
I did.
You can hold them up and show them to the camera and let us know what they are.
So the first book that I wrote is the 10-Minute Tidy, 108 Ways to Organize Your Home Quickly. Okay. Some of the things that we talked about are in there. And then I wrote a second book a few years later about the 10-Minute Tidy, 108 Ways to Organize Your Office Quickly. So both of these have tips that you can do in 10 minutes at a time that are going to help you stay organized.
Awesome. And how can people get a hold of the book?
The website is 10minutetidy.com.
Okay, awesome. And then let's talk a little bit about your practice. You're based here in Minnesota, but also have work in California because that's where you're from.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of you, and what are some of the things you do for clients?
Sure. So they can get a hold of me through organized4success.com. My business is called Organized for Success, and I do both residential and business organizing in both California and Minnesota.
Do you do any of the virtual organizing and all, where you work with people over Skype or the phone?
I do, and I've had clients throughout the country because the principles are the same, and it's very easy to screen share. And so I do Outlook training and all kinds of support of like, this is what my desk looks like and how do we work through the process.
Awesome. Well, hey, we've got an action-packed show here, so I appreciate that, and we'll have you back again, especially since you're in the Minnesota area. You can come down here to Studio B, and we can be live instead of over Skype. So really enjoyed the tips today. So
thank you.
It is Shannon McGinnis from OrganizedForSuccess.com, and now your office should be super productive. And again, go back and listen to the tip on the stapler. I think you're going to love that one. So until next time, John Hunt here for Keeping You Organized.
Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
Anything within hand's reach, we consider that valuable real estate because really, if you're sitting at your desk, there's not a lot of room there, and most of us have kitchen nooks or things like that, very small spaces. So those are things that you should be accessing at least daily, if not weekly, monthly. Those three criteria. If it's anything that you do every 6 months or once in a blue moon, you don't need to have it right at your fingertips. It can be somewhere else if you don't have the room right there.